What always happens in this business? The theft starts everywhere, the vultures come out, unsheathe their claws, and the plundering begins. Everyone wants to take advantage and have some edge. Workers, relatives, front men, everyone hits the jackpot. The first to run away in terror was Jorge Milton Cifuentes. He immediately leaves and takes refuge in Colombia. And as I tell you, the front men, workers, and family, close to Humberto Ojeda like his sisters, hit the jackpot. And little by little, they start taking over everything they can. I mean businesses, lands for farming, properties, cars, an endless list of things. It's just an exaggeration, the amount of things they stole from him, but I'll tell you what happened later. But before I forget, someone left Sinaloa to never return, but he left fully loaded. He stole more than 450 gold bars from Robachivas. Just imagine a single person knowing where that treasure was. He truly hit the jackpot, but really, this happens often in this environment. But, all right, we need to move on from what happened. The woman and the children of the Robachivas saw everything that was happening. That they were being blatantly robbed and also fearing what had happened to the gentleman, so they decided to move to another city. But they were coming and going from Culiacan all the time. Over the years in 2001, as you may know, El Pocha leaves Puente Grande, and it so happens that someone introduces Licenciado Damaso to the widow of Robachivas, and the Colombian Jorge Milton Cifuentes goes to Sinaloa to try and investigate what happened to his partner. It was around the year 2003. Because what Milton wanted was to work. But if they had given his partner the resignation, then he thought he might be in danger. So he gathered his courage and decides to venture out to see what had happened. Obviously, it's not like he left with his eyes closed and without knowing anything. No, of course not. Before that, on setting foot in Sinaloa again, he asked, called, and was told to go ahead, that he would be warmly welcomed there. I tell you, he gathered courage because in that environment, you can never trust anyone's word. Well, once in Sinaloa, Mr. Milton meets with the widow of Robachivas and they talk. Speaking with the widow, and she introduced him to the licenciado. Milton, upon learning that the licenciado was working with Pocha, asked if he could arrange a meeting with him, and the licenciado immediately said yes. They would agree and do so immediately. A meeting is arranged for Milton. He boards a small plane to move with El Pocha During the flight, Milton realizes that flying in a small plane in those places is very risky because the runways are very short and any mistake, or an unforeseen event on the runway and the plane might have an accident. So when he talked to El Pocha to make a good impression, he told him he was gifting a helicopter that was in Culiacan to El Pocha. They say his eyes only sparkled because of the gift. Then he tells Pocha, "It's an MD-500 helicopter with no tail rotor and it makes no noise. But I ask you a favor to help me investigate who was the one that sent Humberto Ojeda's resignation, and also if he can make sure he can work there in Mexico without any risk." Right there in that meeting, Milton offers Pocha the opportunity to work using tuna boats, just like he did with Robachivas, because they never had a single incident and no losses. Esto bene. That it was a marvel, because ships could be at sea for up to 2 or 3 months. Near Colombia or Ecuador, it was easy and quick to load them up and send them to Mexico. Obviously, as you might imagine, Pocha loved the idea and told him to go ahead, that it was perfect, and asked when they could expect the gift, referring to the chopper, helicopter. And Milton told him right away, just as soon as I got back to Culiacan, I would check on the helicopter's condition, and to send a pilot to move it wherever Pocha wants it. And of course, Pocha said I would take care of the Robachivas. I will investigate how that resignation went. And about security, don't worry, you'll be able to work and be here as if you were at home." That's how things stood. And when Milton went down to the city, he told the news to the widow of Robachivas, the Fratrintam, that they had to send the helicopter to the Pocha. The widow obviously got upset, and she asked him why he had done that, if the helicopter had been her husband's, and so now it belonged to her. That helicopter was not bought jointly at all, meaning Milton had no say over what to do or not do with the helicopter. But Milton told her, "Think, woman, think carefully. He's going to help me find out what happened to your husband. And he can offer you and me protection so you won't have things stolen from you anymore, and that you and your children can be at ease." The lady wasn't very convinced, but she had no other option. She had to agree to give up the helicopter. I'll show you a picture of a similar helicopter so you can get an idea of what it was like. In fact, the helicopter was sky blue. The helicopter cost just over $1 million and was stored at the Rancho El Roble, an ostrich farm of the Robachivas. Here I'm going to show you the coordinates of where that ranch is located. There. El Robachivas also had 2 very, very fun red ultralight airplanes. Shortly thereafter, the Pocha, through the licenciado, arranged a meeting for Milton in Mexico with his compadre Loma to talk about what had happened with his partner. There, in that meeting, Loma told Milton, "My compadre Pocha told me you want to know who resigned Robachivas. Here, I'll tell you. It was me. I resigned him." "I resigned Robachivas? What do you want to do?" And Milton replied, "You resigned a good man?" And Loma replied, "Well, and if born again, would resign him once more. But I have no problem with you. You're part of us. You're like family. And you're very close to my son, to Vicente, and I've known you since you were very young, so you have nothing to worry about. There is no problem with you." And so it was, there were no issues, and he worked hand in hand with those from Sinaloa. Just like in those years, the licenciado helped the Robachivas family recover much of what had been stolen from them by people close to him. As I already told you, they were relatives, front men, and workers, and they began to gather intelligence to locate the people and what they had stolen. The Ganmun in charge of this operation was the 13th, a responsible man who did things by the book. And so they gradually began to reclaim things. They got to an office that was stolen from Robachivas and his family, and that they continued to use it to store documents, land papers, and plots. Then they also had 1 or 2 cars that, of those who had been from Robachivas, that's where one of the licenciado secretaries, known as El Indio, arrived with L13 and his team, and they ordered all the people who were there, everyone face down. Secretaries, workers, everyone who was there and worked in that place froze. They proceeded to collect invoices, land deeds, as I'm telling you. There in that office, the deeds to more than 30,000 hectares of land were recovered. Just imagine if you price that at 100,000 pesos per hectare. But I tell you, the hectare wasn't worth that. Where Robachivas bought them, they are above 500,000 pesos. Many of them. Do the math. That's over 5 billion just in those hectares. There were more and more things, just to give you an idea. But well, in the offices I mentioned, they recovered a lot more properties, and obviously the office. I'm going to show you a picture of the office from the outside that's in the Chapultepec neighborhood of Culiacan. They also recovered at least 15 ranches, including El Guadalajara, which was in the south of Costa Rica, near the highway. The workers that Robachivas had one by one, they found them, and they recover all that was stolen from the family. And so, everyone apologized, saying they had made a mistake, that things were misunderstood. You can all imagine the string of lies and excuses that came out. But those who were most upset were the sisters of Robachivas, and they hate with all their being, to their nieces and nephews and sisters-in-law. Because of all the fuss, Robachivas' son had to always ride in an armored car, and had to hire state police as bodyguards, because as they always say, family is the worst, and they swore they will take their revenge. And, well, truthfully. It's just such an abuse, really, because, well, that belonged to the widow and her children. It's not right that they wanted to harm their own blood. I mean their nephews. All for the sake of money. But, well, as they say, it happens even in the best families. Well, in the meantime, out of all this, guess what? Pocha didn't have anyone to fly the helicopter, since most of the pilots were not trained to fly the MD helicopter type. So, Mr. Milton, he did him a favor by getting a Colombian pilot who was sent to Sinaloa. There, after a long and difficult negotiation, they reached an agreement. This regarding the payment of his fees, and he accepted. Working for him. So the Pocha also sent his nephew, who was called Sagittarius, so that the pilot could train him. And so when the pilot flew it, it was the pilot and his Sagittarius co-pilot. The Pocha was fascinated with the helicopter and showed it off everywhere. Because when he scheduled to see someone in some part of the mountains, by the time he arrived, nobody had noticed. Until he was practically in the place because it was very stealthy and made almost no helicopter noises. If you knew how many people and women they took on helicopter rides, it was something exaggerated and all about cruising around non-stop, hiking through mountains, beaches, dams, all to inspire love. But well, as I say, that helicopter never stopped. It was too much. The code name for the ranch where it was stored, it was the chickens because it was an ostrich breeder. That's why they called it that. So from chickens to the mountains, daily, until one bad day they called Sagittarius to tell him they needed to fly to a ranch in the mountains, so there it was, Sagittarius. He picked up the pilot and they went where the helicopter was. So, for this, I'm going to explain to you, whenever the helicopter entered or exited the warehouse where it was stored, they did it with special skates to pull out and roll the helicopter. That was always the procedure. As I just mentioned to you, it was stored inside a warehouse. In fact, here, I'm going to show you a picture and the exact spot where the helicopter was. Well, maybe that day they were feeling lazy or thought it'd be easy, so they decided to take the helicopter out of the warehouse flying, so they fired it up. And when the helicopter is lifting off to take him out, it seems a crosswind came in that caused the helicopter. Two turned around very abruptly, losing control and hitting the ceiling, then the floor and the warehouse walls. The fact is, the helicopter was left completely useless like twisted scrap metal, thank to God. Sagittarius and the pilot surprisingly were alive. Even with many injuries, they didn't lose consciousness and managed to turn off the helicopter. Lucky them, that the engine did not explode or catch fire. Despite all the hits they took, and luckily for them in the ranch was also Colores, the brother of the licenciado in that place, and he entered. And the watchman of the chickens helped to take out the injured, and Colores transported them to a clinic to provide medical care. Sadly, the Colombian pilot lost several teeth due to the hits. And although Sagittarius was also injured, luck smiled on him, and it was nothing serious. After that accident, the Colombian pilot, once he recovered and got back on his feet, returned to Colombia and was never heard from again. Well, the Robachivas widow sold the tuna boats and started renting out the properties and lands that had been recovered. actually. She put them up for rent with a company, and the pocha rented them several places like that chicken ranch I just told you about. Well, up until today. Today, as I speak to you, the pocha owes the Robachivas family more than $13 million for rent that was never paid, and from property sales, and that without mentioning the interests of over 20 years. Well, before I forget, the United States government froze and secured several accounts that the Robachivas family had in different places. Some say it was because Vicente talked about it, and that's how the government found out they existed. The truth is, I don't know the real reason. But I think in one of those, they secured about $11 million. From what I've researched, I think there were about 8 accounts totaling around $55 million. In fact, I'm going to show you a news article that says so. But as I've been telling you, that's not much, because if you knew, they have the largest lands in the areas with the highest increase in value in the city of Culiacan. They rent all these lands, some warehouses, some other lands. For the least they pay a rent, it should be around $20,000 a month. And as I told you, the Robachivas bought about half of the Las Quintas neighborhood, go figure. Friends, to conclude, let's talk a bit about the McLaren. It's an F1, its chassis number is 039. It has 618 horsepower, and it comes with 3 seats. Because the one driving goes in the middle like Formula 1 cars and 2 seats on the sides, but the space is very limited, only that there would be children or very thin person. Is a 6-speed manual. Its 0 to 100 is in 3.2 seconds, with a top speed of 391 kilometers per hour. These figures, if they sound exaggerated today, imagine back then it was something unreal. Some of the people who have a McLaren F1 like this are Ralph Lauren, Mr. Bean, Jay Leno, Elon Musk had one, and Josh Garrison, member of the Beatles, and sultans and sheikhs of... From Arab countries, there are only 100 units in the world. Originally, the price of this vehicle, when it went on sale, was about $970,000. But in the year 2021, one of these vehicles was sold at an auction for more than $20 million. They say it's lost, that it is secure, that it was stolen, that it was taken out of Mexico, that it's hidden, that it's in a cemetery, that they crashed it, that they painted it another color. What happened to this dream car? Well, here I'm going to show you pictures that everyone has already seen. Or rather, many of you have seen them, which is when the son of Robachivas used to take the car out for a spin. I also thank my friend MX Bellico, who lent me his video and provided it for me to show here in this picture too, that I'm showing you. A person came out with a red cap and a red shirt. This person name is Emiliano, who was one of the people close to the son of Robachivas. He was very close back then. Here you can see him. And to give you more context, listen to the corrido Los Malilleros, or the Begats Güeros. And I also recommend Angel de Hierp, also from Los Parientes, so that you get the context of what I'm talking about.
Ese botón redondo. Aprieta. El chino.
Viene con el dedo en medio.
No pisa los asientos. No pisa los asientos.
También abajo. Están chido. Súper chido. Está súper chido. Y nada más tiene una.
No naman mag-isa. Ay,
The car did go for a ride sometime. There in Culiacan. But you all know how envy is in that city. Or if you don't, you can imagine it. That the children of the most powerful people told the Robachivas son not to take out that car because it was very flashy and it might provoke someone into doing something bad. About stealing it, I mean. It was dangerous to drive that car. As someone would say, giving advice to the son of Robachivas. But here we don't play dumb, and we don't want to play dumb with you, our public, either. Obviously, they were threats disguised as kind words. Why? Because it bothered them that they were bringing a new Silverado or tops a new Mercedes. And well, this young person was driving a McLaren. That's why it was only taken out like about 4 times. Now, where is that McLaren? We need to end the myths and any nonsense that people come up with about that McLaren. That McLaren is in Culiacan, inside a house. And when I say inside a house, I mean literally in the living room. They knocked down a wall to bring it in. And then they rebuilt the wall. The McLaren is inside a bubble, and it's been like that for many years. I don't know now, right at this moment. But back then, it had fans and air conditioning, so that there would be air circulating, and in fact, one time I went with the owner to wash the car. And for those who don't know it, Robachivas' son and his escorts are the only ones who wash that car. That's only between long periods of time, and from time to time they turned it on. But that is long time periods, hearing it when they accelerate, seeing it, and getting in. The truth is, it really is a beauty. It looks like a Batmobile because of the also golden wheels it has. It is spectacular. Truly, the keys are not lost. That car hasn't moved. And as I tell you, it's in perfect condition. Not a single scratch. They take care of it as if it were in a safe. And it will never be sold. It's not for sale. And if someone comes offering, the answer is, just tell them that car was stolen. That it's gone. That it's no longer in Mexico. That's why they invent so many things, but the car is in a house in Culiacan. I know exactly which house it is in, but I'm not going to tell you because there's a bunch of vultures, scoundrels, and crooks that could do something bad, and to avoid all that, we better reserve the location. In fact, I have a picture in that car. But maybe if on some occasion I uncover my face, I'll show you, so you see. There's no lie in what I'm telling you. Hollywood has come asking for that car for movies. To take it to exhibitions, give it awards, to be on commercials, for magazine reports, for many things, and the answer is always no, not interested. Thank you. In fact, around the year 2010, they offered the owner $10 million for the car. The owner only said it's not for sale. Even if they offer double, I won't sell it. No one is going to borrow it, and no one is going to buy it. It's an invaluable gem, since it has a value beyond money. Very, but very sentimental for him. So all collectors and people interested in that car, from now on, get the idea that you'll never have it. In fact, they even did a remodel of the house where their car is located a while back. But it's better to leave it at that. We do not want to endanger that gem or its owner. Well, now finally, as an extra fact as the many facts I already told you. Many years later, in the year 2017, they napkid the owner of that car. But thanks to one of his in-law relatives, he was indulged by the criminals, and thank God nothing bad happened there. But well, friends, that's a wrap for this episode. I hope you liked it. And if I missed something, I hope that at least you get an idea of the amount of money this person made. I already told you that car is well kept. Without sales plans, and it's not lost, as they say out there. I'm sorry I can't give you more details, because you'll understand that car is almost like a heritage of humanity, especially in Culiacan, and we shouldn't put it at risk. I'm saying goodbye to all of you, sending you a big hug, and see you in the next episode. That's also going to be very good. Don't forget that the unique and true narrative of the world of Okran can only be found here. Greetings to everyone and see you next time. Follow us on our social networks, and thanks for the support.